The 2018-19 Toronto Raptors will go down in history. Not only will they be remembered as the first international team to ever win the NBA championship, but also as an unlikely champion that upended one of the greatest dynasties in recent NBA history. The NBA expanded northward in the mid-90s, a few years after the Toronto Blue Jays became the first Canadian team to win not just one, but back-to-back World Series titles. The Raptors' 4-2 win over the Dubs in 2019 was the nation's first NBA title after 24 years of waiting. But this team is a lot more than just a few bits of trivia. The Raps were dominant on both ends of the court and featured a deep roster that showed out in the season's biggest moments. The story of this championship run began in the summer of 2018, when President Masai Ujiri made a pair of bold decisions that set this squad up for a title. First, despite the fact that the 2017-18 Raptors won 59 games, and despite the fact that their head coach Dwayne Casey won Coach of the Year, he was fired.
When you get fired, which I did recently, I don't know if you knew that or not, after winning Coach of the Year, you always doubt yourself a little bit.
It was a controversial decision. Ujiri replaced Casey with Nick Nurse, who had never been a head coach in the NBA before. Second, the Raptors traded away DeMar DeRozan, Jakob Poeltl, and a first-round pick for Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green. DeRozan was an all-star and a fan favorite in Toronto. Leonard was a puzzling and disgruntled star with just 1 year remaining on his contract. He played just 9 games the previous season. These offseason moves changed the vibe around the Raptors, but something else big happened that summer too. Something that reshaped the entire power balance in the NBA and opened up a new pathway to the finals. A pathway that had been blocked by one player for 8 straight years.
LeBron James is a Los Angeles Laker.
Between 2011 and 2018, every team that represented the East in the finals had one big thing in common. LeBron James played for them. Between his time in Miami and his second stint in Cleveland, James was the best player on 8 straight Eastern Conference champions. It was a remarkable streak that upended multiple Raptors teams with their own championship dreams. But with James now out west with the Lakers and Leonard up north, the hope was these new-look Raptors could finally get over the hump, and they did. The personnel moves obviously paid off on the scoreboard. Leonard immediately became the team's leading scorer. Green brought his reliable three-point stroke, and the Raptors filled the court with bucket getters who could threaten every square inch of the scoring area. Let's start in the paint. No Raptor scored more in this vital area than Pascal Siakam. During the 2018-19 season, Siakam emerged as another star on this team, in part thanks to his ability to attack the teeth of the defense. The 24-year-old forward scored 10.9 of his 16.9 points per game in the paint, and many of those came off of drives. And many of those rim-attacking drives featured his signature spin moves like this.
Oh my goodness. Siakam, the creativity!
Siakam's 10.9 paint points per game led the team, but Leonard wasn't far behind, averaging 10.3 points per game in the lane himself. These big wings got it done closest to the hoop, but Toronto also featured some great jump shooters. In the mid-range areas, this squad was led by Kawhi. Early in his career, Leonard struggled to shoot, but during his time in San Antonio, that changed, and he modeled his jumper off of Kobe Bryant's. Like Bryant, Leonard became one of the best mid-range scorers in the league, thanks in part to hitting pull-ups like this.
Kawhi Leonard with that step-back pull-up and lethal.
And fadeaways like this.
The Raptors past against Raptors present, and the present won on that occasion.
All told, Leonard averaged 5.4 points per game in the mid-range, and these two-point jumpers would be a massive fixture in his playoff repertoire. More on that later. Beyond the arc, the Raptors scored over 37 points per game thanks to a roster stacked with shooting talent. In the corners, nobody was more dangerous than Danny Green, who who not only led the Raps in corner threes that season, but also ranked second in the NBA behind PJ Tucker. Green was a prototypical 3-and-D weapon for this team with a shot diet heavy on these valuable tries. Above the break, no one on the squad was as prolific as Mr. Raptor himself, Kyle Lowry. Lowry averaged 6.2 points per game on above the break threes alone and hit countless big shots in this zone as both an off the dribble and catch and shoot shooter.
Lowry pulls, you bet! He got it!
But virtually everyone on this roster could hit shots above the break. Lowry, Green, and Leonard were the leaders, but players like Fred VanVleet, Serge Ibaka, Norman Powell, OG Anunoby, CJ Miles, and even Marc Gasol could punish teams with triples too. That's a ton of depth, but they couldn't have won it all without Leonard, who logged one of the best postseasons we've ever seen as he lifted the Raps to the championship. He made his lone season in Toronto count, winning his second Finals MVP, joining LeBron James and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as the only guys to win it for multiple franchises.
He helped me get what I wanted to get.
And in both of Kawhi's Finals MVP performances, he stopped a three-peat from happening, taking down the Heat in 2014 before stopping the Dubs 5 years later. But it wasn't just one series. Leonard's dominance ran all playoffs long. Let's put this 2019 run into perspective. Kawhi scored 732 points during the 2019 playoffs, third most in a single postseason all time, trailing Michael Jordan in 1992
Did you see that one?
and LeBron James in 2018. That's pretty good company, right? He recorded 14 30-point games, including 8 on the road. Only Kobe with 9 in 2009 had more 30-point road games in a single playoffs. 58 of his postseason points came in clutch time. That is tied with LeBron James in 2007 for the third most in a single postseason over the last 25 years. The singular clutch shot of this run? Of course, his improbable bouncing game winner over Joel Embiid in the East semis. The only game-winning buzzer beater in a Game 7 in NBA history.
Is this the dagger?
Leonard became the second player in NBA postseason history to hit a game-winning buzzer beater in a winner-take-all playoff game, joining Michael Jordan with the shot in 1989. If that doesn't make you appreciate this shot enough, consider this. Per Second Spectrum's tracking, which accounts for things like defender distance, who is shooting, and how hard the attempt is, Leonard had just a 22.8% chance to make this shot. But as important as that shot was, it only got Toronto to the conference finals. After the Bucks went up 2-0 in that series, Nick Nurse turned to Leonard once again to save the Raptor season. But this time, it was on the other end of the court. Kawhi is a defensive stopper, but in those first 2 games, he defended Giannis on just 3 of his shot attempts as Milwaukee's MVP dominated the paint. In the final 4 games of the conference finals, Leonard defended Giannis for 25 of his field goal attempts, holding him to just 28% shooting. The decision to put Kawhi on Giannis changed the series. The Raps won 4 straight and won their first conference championship. Putting Leonard on Giannis helped cement Nick Nurse's reputation as someone not afraid to take chances, experiment with schemes, and try different strategies to win games. Something that was even more evident in the finals. Nurse became the 9th rookie head coach to win the NBA championship, in part because he was not afraid to adjust on the fly in extreme ways, like going to a box-and-1 defense in Game 2 versus the Warriors. Against that unconventional defense, Golden State shot 0 for 4 from the field and committed 2 turnovers, with all 6 plays coming in the final 5 minutes of that game. Back on offense, although Leonard was the top clutch player in the playoffs, Fred VanVleet was the most clutch when it mattered most. Remember, Leonard shot 0 for 4 in the 4th quarter of Game 6 of the finals. VanVleet came through in the biggest way, making 3 game-tying or go-ahead 3-pointers in the 4th quarter of Game 6. He joined Reggie Miller in 2000 as the only players to do that in the fourth quarter of a finals game.
Van Vliet gets a wide open look, puts it in. Fred Van Vliet, a huge three-pointer.
That aforementioned Raptors depth proved decisive in Game 6 as Toronto became the fourth team to have 4 different players score 20 points in a finals clinching win. Just as their superstar stumbled a little bit, Lowry and Siakam poured in 26 and Van Vliet added 22. And don't forget Serge Ibaka's 15 either. While some will question if this team would have even beaten the Warriors without the injuries to Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson, unfortunately injuries are a fact of life in the NBA and often influence the outcomes of big-time playoff series. What we do know for sure, Toronto was rock solid and always met the moment, delivering a historic trophy for the league and for the fans north of the border.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.